Welcome to PopNerdery, episode 9. PopNerdery is the show that is nerdier than spending 3 hours at work photoshopping pop culture icons onto a black and white photo of Mount Rushmore with shareware. PopNerdery is a place where you're allowed to have an opinion on anything in pop culture, but you gotta have more than just a little bit to say. We'll pick out some of the headlines that have us talking this week, do a deep dive, and then give our pop culture recommendations. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. I'm your host, Brent, and with me, as always, is the fastest reader I know, Toph, and the fastest podcast editor I also know, Dave. What's up, guys?
I'm quick draw McGraw with these podcast editing now. Figured it out, boys.
I just like words.
Yeah.
You really do like words. I haven't figured out if Toph reads at such a mastery level where it's like he looks at the first word and the last word on a line and just skims the whole thing, or if it's like he just kind of absorbs all the words as he glances at the page. But yeah,
I just look at the first one, the last one, and I make up everything in the middle. I'm not really, I'll fill in the blanks here. I just need the first word, the last word, and, I can... How difficult can it be to make up the story as it goes along? Anyways, this is why I give, such little to book commentaries, because I'm reading an entirely different book from everyone else.
Maybe that's why I think you're so creative and imaginative with your takes on everything, is because you're only really ingesting about, 10% of the actual media that we view.
10% tops. Hey. So, yeah, basically...
And also why you're wrong so many times about things.
I haven't been wrong yet. It's all empirical in my mind. So speaking of being empirical, there are a couple ways for you to follow PopNerdery. That was the worst segue ever. You can follow us on the Twitters at PopNerdery, POPNERDERY. We comment on things as they happen. We subtweet. We hashtag. Sometimes we emoji. I've been getting more into the emojis lately, especially using them incorrectly and expecting people to pick up on my meaning.
All the eggplants.
Just like constant eggplants, corncob peach, squirt, dolphin. And I'm like, right, guys, vacation. Huh? You got a couple ways to listen to the show. The first is through the old iTunes. Hop to the podcast section, fire up that old search box, and type PopNerdery in there. You can find us, you can rate us, you can review us, you can subscribe to us, and you can tell us how much you like our dulcet tones being in your lobes. You can also... check us out at popnerdery.com. We archive all the episodes there. We fight in the comments. We make up in the comments. We make love in the comments. Sometimes. Maybe that's
not enough. Yeah, we need to do more of all of those things.
Get it on.
Again, I'm just reading the first word and the last word. I'm kind of assuming what happens in between on some of the stuff you guys type. So our relationship might be very different in my head than it is in yours. You got one more way to listen to the PopNerdery podcast is to read the entire Twin Peaks directory into an envelope, mail that to Dave Fultz. He'll come to your house, podcast live over your shoulder.
Don't tempt me. I will do it. All right. We are going to, in our B segment today, it's kind of a little bit of a nebulous topic, but we're going to talk about things that in the future, future denizens of the planet Earth might look back and say, they did what in 2016? I think that's the best way that I could set that up. Just wait until the B segment. We'll get there. Just be patient, friends.
That's a nice little tease, Dave.
But first, we're going to do the news. So the first thing up, I don't know if you guys watched any of the Golden Globes. I have a couple of highlights that I wanted to talk about. Mainly, I talk about these in how I think they're going to affect the Oscar races, because I do slightly care about the Oscars still. I don't so much about the Golden Globes. The first thing that stuck out to me about the Golden Globes this week was Ricky Gervais was the host for the 4th time, I believe, and as I was watching it, it honestly looked like he was trying to never get asked back again. Mm-hmm. He was hosting with such.
It seems like that happens every time, but yeah.
He was hosting not because he was being offensive, which he was, but also because he just hosts with such a disdain for the whole process. It amazes me that they invite him back at all. He literally word for word said a couple of times, the Golden Globes don't matter. When you win these awards, please don't come up here and make a big deal out of it, because no one cares.
Jesus.
That's when I turned it off at that point. I was like, you're right, Ricky Gervais. What the fuck am I doing with my life? And I turned off the Golden Globes.
Yeah, he is right. The Golden Globes matter very little, and he made a couple of jokes that I thought were very kind of prescient in the early end of the night. when he talked about how the Golden Globes, he made reference to the Golden Globes, you're able to buy them by showing up, or you're able to, and one of those instances was The Martian. The Martian, they were able to get Ridley Scott and Matt Damon and a lot of the stars from The Martian, which you guys will remember had a really pretty star-studded cast, to show up because they nominated it, but they didn't nominate it in Best Drama or Best Picture, where it should have been and where it might not get nominated at the Oscars. They nominated it in Best Comedy, which is a weird place for it, and then it won. So they succeeded in getting Matt Damon to show up to their show, and Ridley Scott, and all the other stars of The Martian. But it kind of overshadowed some of the other pretty good comedies from the year, namely Trainwreck. So Matt Damon won Best Performance by a lead actor in a comedy, which he was not, and The Martian won Best Film Comedy, which it was not.
The funniest part was when he almost died. That was hilarious.
It was hilarious. It was a movie that had funny moments, but it certainly was not a comedy. And as you guys will remember, it was my pick for my favorite thing of the year. So I'm not.
No, we all love this thing, but it's hilarious that anyone won anything for its comedic value.
Yeah. So that was one thing that people were talking about after, and that was kind of the nerd movie that got it the biggest props at the Golden Globes. I think that there's now that they nominate 10, 12, 15 movies for Best Picture, I think it might get a Best Picture nod at the Oscars because they don't do Best Comedy at the Oscars. But I don't think Damon will get a nod for Best Actor. So it's kind of nice to see him up there. I've always loved Matt Damon. Another thing that happened.
You and Jimmy Kimmel.
I do. I love Damon. I love Affleck. I'll always kind of be in the bag for those guys. Sly Stallone won for Best Supporting Actor, which people think he has a lot of juice for the Oscars for Best Supporting Actor. And he did a really nice job of stringing a bunch of words together. As Sly Stallone is, sometimes that's difficult for him to do in public nowadays. He has taken a couple of hits to the noggin and quite a few other things over the years. But one of the things that kind of stuck out, we all, when we talked about Creed a little bit, and we've talked about Black Panther a couple of times, have hailed Ryan Coogler as a guy who did a fantastic job getting this movie made. The story behind it is that him and a buddy in college wrote this spec script, and that this was not an idea for the studio to bring this franchise back. It was his story. He co-wrote it. He directed it, and he was not thanked by Sly Stallone at the Golden Globes after he won.
Makes no sense.
Stallone went as far as to thank his imaginary friend Rocky Balboa.
Oh, God.
But didn't thank Coogler, and he also didn't thank Michael B. Jordan, who was, don't forget, the lead in this movie.
The title character.
The two reasons that this movie was made.
Yes, exactly. So that was a little bit weird. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to thank Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan for giving me this movie because I really enjoyed it. And as the last thing from the Golden Globes, and I swear to you we'll stop talking about it, this is a...
Ricky already told us it doesn't matter. So
It doesn't matter. However, it sometimes can be a bellwether for who wins Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor at the Oscars. And The Revenant, which I haven't seen yet, swept all three. So the guy who directed Birdman last year, Alejandro Iñárritu, he won Best Director at the Oscars for that. He won Best Director and Best Picture here at the Golden Globes, and Leo won for Best Actor. He's never won an Oscar, so people are paying a lot of attention to that. So I think we all need to go see The Revenant, guys.
I just can't support movies with bear rape in them. I just won't have it. I'm anti-bear rape.
Oh, I am pro.
That's
bear
almost
rape.
like saying you're pro some other kind of rape. I just think you ought to take a hard stance
against all
rape.
Yeah.
I think I can easily do that. Actually, I feel good about.
Or
that.
all bears. Either one is fine.
I'm not really anti-bears. I am anti-rape, though. That's a fine point.
I live in Chicago, so I'm very pro bears of any kind. But I think I would.
He's talking about football,
guys. Yeah. All right, let's move on from the Golden Globes. There was, if you want to YouTube it, a really awkward moment with Mel Gibson and Ricky Gervais.
That's hard to imagine.
Yeah, it was really awkward. But yeah, so moving on, the Coens did not direct a movie that was released in 2015, but early this year we're going to get Hail Caesar, which is the Coen brothers' next movie. The first official trailer was released, and I've seen a couple of really nice TV spots for it over the last couple of weeks. And honestly, I'm the most excited about this movie since probably No Country. That's probably the most exciting Coen brothers movie for me since 2007, that's a big deal.
I think I'm with you. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else that has me this excited in a really long time. It looks like a very kind of return to form for the stuff that I really loved with, and specifically Barton Fink, which I don't think gets enough love.
Yeah.
And this has a lot of shades of Barton Fink to it.
Well, I didn't see Llewyn Davis, which I think I need to go back and see because it is Oscar Isaac, and I've fallen in love with the man recently.
Yeah.
I just saw that one. So,
okay.
Worth
my time?
Yeah, if you like Coen Brothers movies, you will like Inside Llewyn Davis. Yes. It's for kind of the same reason that I don't always get why I like Coen Brothers movies. I'm still in this place, so analyzing it with you would be good for my soul. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, I've kind of gotten on the Oscar Isaac train recently. I loved him in Star Wars, obviously. I just watched Ex Machina, which we can talk about at some point. Once
you did?
I did. We've only been talking about it for like 5 episodes now. And I loved it. It was really good. There were parts of it that I certainly do need to discuss. It was very good. I thought it was very well made. So yeah, the Hail Caesar has just a litany of stars, and it looks like it's a little bit of a meta take on Hollywood, which I always kind of enjoy.
It's all meta all the time.
So the next thing up on today's news, there's a short list now for the Han Solo anthology film, I guess you'll call it. The last we had heard, apparently every white 18 to 28-year-old, 18 to 35-year-old actor in Hollywood had auditioned for it or sent a screener or done something. But it looks like they've narrowed it down to about 8 names. So I'm going to go through those names that I can see right now. I have Miles Teller, Dave Franco, Ansel Elgort, Logan Lerman, Scott Eastwood, Jack Rayner are the names that I see. So that's 6. I personally really like Miles Teller and Ansel Elgort as actors. I think the only thing I've seen Ansel Elgort in was the John Green movie,
Fault in Our Stars.
Fault in Our Stars, and I thought he was very nonchalantly charismatic in that movie, which is kind of what I would describe Han Solo as, just very nonchalant and charismatic, and he kind of has the look. So I could see him doing a really nice job with it, but also I think of those actors, Miles Teller is probably the most accomplished so far, and I could really get down on them just hiring whoever they think is the best actor. I could look past, maybe if the look is a little bit off.
Yeah.
It's more about the bravado than the look. When I look at all the faces, there's issues with any of them. So there's such an iconic swagger, for lack of a better word, that they need to pull off more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. Absolutely. Did you? And I was going to ask you guys, have you seen? We're talking about recasting Han Solo. Have you seen any of the articles that have come out about the half recasting of Chewbacca that they were forced to do for Force Awakens?
I knew about it, but I don't know if I know what you mean. So go ahead. Peter
Mayhew, who is all of our Chewbacca.
Correct.
He his health is not the best. So when you see Chewbacca in the movie, about 75% of it is a different actor. He's a guy who used to play basketball in college at, and I'm going to blank on the school, St. John's or someplace. He's a big 7-foot kind of Slavic-looking fellow. And he's a real big dude, and apparently him and Peter Mayhew have become pretty close, which is a nice little it was a nice little story that I read in Rolling Stone.
Passing the torch.
Yeah, and so I would imagine that guy would probably work alongside one of these guys that we're talking about here. And listeners, you might be asking yourself, if we're not going to get this Han Solo anthology movie until 2018, why, oh why, Dave, are we talking about casting a young Han Solo? Along with this short list came the rumor that we might see a young Han Solo and potentially even a young Chewbacca in Star Wars Rogue One, which is coming this December, which I think would be nice.
I agree.
I don't need a like a C-3PO with his guts hanging out kind of thing.
No.
Like I don't need any of the prequels moments.
Nope.
But it would be nice if they were in the background of a cantina or something like that.
Yeah, I'd take that.
I could totally see a scenario where you actually have him like smuggling and stealing stuff from the rebels or something, just because that would be fun.
Yeah. Maybe
yeah.
some Bothan spies get a hold of the Death Star plans and then Han steals it from them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all I want to happen. Like if he has more than 2 minutes of screen time,
Too much.
I won't be appreciative of it. So.
I do think it is smart to get him involved, whoever this actor is going to be, to get him involved in a very small way before you put him in a whole 2-hour movie that they have to carry, so that way people can get used to the idea of a non-Han Solo,
non-Ford,
non-Harrison Ford Han Solo.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, next up, CES was last week. If you don't know what CES is, it's the kind of tech and gadget show that happens every year where you kind of see stuff that most of which you certainly cannot afford. I'm talking about $10,000 TV sets that are, the thickness of an envelope and the like. But there was some stuff that was released that you can actually afford that piqued our interest. Toph, what was some stuff that you saw at CES that caught your eye?
Well, the funniest thing is when I saw this link, I immediately, I've been following along with some of the CES coverage for some of the bigger stuff, the stuff that a lot of the times a technology innovation gets introduced at CES that 2 years, goes into wide scale production. So it's always kind of fun to track that stuff. But I saw that list and it was like the stuff that you could afford. And as I went down the entirety of the list, for the most part, my wife would kill me if I bought that and that and that, spent that much money on that thing, have no use for that. I think I ended up with like 1 or 2 things that I've used and just this is even feasible. In the realm of possibility that I wouldn't die, should I buy this stuff?
Were there a lot of Hot Toys Deadpool figurines on that list?
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what it is. It's the exact same thing where you look at it and I lust after it, and then I very quickly go, price tag? Yeah, nope, this is never actually going to happen.
So instead of nerd shit, it's just tech shit, which is...
it's the exact same feeling. It's just, directed in a different direction.
Yeah, which is still our stuff, but...
I mean, yeah. The one thing that did get announced that I actually was not on this list, but I was very interested in, was the Chevy Bolt, which is their new all-electric vehicle.
Yeah.
That basically promises a 200-mile range, where the normal range is slightly less than 100 miles right now. Yeah. So the fact that one of the more generic American car manufacturers actually did something innovative was very cool, and to my own personal interest.
Yes, and also it's not a $80,000 Tesla.
Yeah, it was actually priced at a price point that a human being could buy a car at, which was nice.
Yeah. I live up here in the north suburbs of Chicago where there are not that many human beings. I rent up here for the time being, and there are just Teslas like you wouldn't even believe. Mm-hmm. It's nuts. I don't understand where these people work or how it is able to happen, but it's nuts. Speaking of nuts, the White House joined Snapchat this week.
Speaking
Not a
of
bunch of cashews.
Yeah. So this
these
is
nuts, send them to the president.
for us. We're old cranky men. Snapchat is the thing where people send dick pics, but apparently Snapchat has turned into more than that. I mean, at least I hope, because I know my wife is on Snapchat now.
Be careful, the White House might send her dick pics.
Yes. Well.
To be clear, I assume that the White House was the recipient of the dick pics as opposed to the dicking. Remember?
Oh, can you
Be careful, your
imagine?
wife might send the White House dick pics.
Right.
Can you only imagine the nasty shit that the White House gets DM'd to them on Snapchat?
That was literally the first thing I had thought of, because it's like, oh, like I follow the president on Twitter, and a lot of the times it's, the press release stuff, but every once in a while it's like, here's a picture of the dog. And it's like, oh, it's fun. I assume their Snapchat will be basically just that. It was the inverse of like what is coming into the White House. That A, like just the level of filth was hilarious to me. But then B, the fact that in some cases it probably constitutes at least a misdemeanor, if not a felony, to send some of that stuff to the White House.
Right,
and you're doing it on a public channel.
Yeah,
the kids today are goddamn stupid. Get off my lawn.
Your worst nightmare would be you send something lewd and lascivious to the White House, and you get that little notification that they've taken a screenshot.
Taking a screenshot of it.
This is now federal evidence, son.
And even better, you can request it under Freedom of Information Act.
That's a good point. In related news, I did see that the GOP also, for tonight's State of the Union, they have joined Snapchat as well. So if you, depending on your political leaning, you can send nasty things to the leaders of both parties.
It's nice that in 2016 we are able to send dick pics to both parties within our bicameral status of government.
And I would argue,
like dick pics are nonpartisan,
Correct.
nonpartisan. Yeah.
You can nonpartisan dick pics.
Yeah, you
Thanks.
could.
I've been
Thanks for helping me with jokes.
No problem. That's what I'm here for.
Hey, and I would argue that one of the parties would get more upset about dick pics than the other, but you see which one.
We're gonna put it in comments which party you think Dave is talking about. Spoiler alert! It's the Green Party.
Oh, wild card! I was
Hey-o.
not expecting a Green Party reference tonight.
No one expects the
party. Everybody raced to that joke.
Yeah.
Yay!
Rand Paul and the Libertarians are still trying to figure out how to get electricity to their towns. All right, moving back into nerd culture.
Yeah, we have segment our audience pretty quickly here.
The Russos have been out in force. Both of the Russos have been out in force talking about Captain America: Civil War recently, and as they directed Winter Soldier, they're directing Civil War. They're also directing the two-part Avengers Infinity War. They're kind of talking about it as their three-part trilogy. And I don't know why they're talking more now than they were before, because this movie still doesn't come out until May. But they have made a lot of comments that have made a lot of us kind of raise our eyebrows, which I tweeted out at PopNerdery. I tweeted out there was a story where they said that they have a big board with 67 names of characters on it that could or should or probably will appear in Infinity War. And somebody over at the AV Club did the math. So far in the MCU, including all the heroes and all the villains on all the movies and the Netflix shows, there are about like 36 characters. So that leaves about 30 characters that we don't know, or they're just too small for us to take into account. But about 30 characters that we don't know that might show up in Infinity War, and it really has me like hoping that we're gonna see really obscure B and C level Marvel heroes just like in the background, like trying to punch Thanos and getting obliterated.
Yeah. On one hand, I'm with you. I kind of want it to be something really bizarre.
Yeah.
Like I want to see like what the very far edges of that board look like.
Right.
Not to like the really weird stuff. On the other hand, I actually don't know how good that movie would be. So I'm kind of torn between wanting to incorporate a lot of weird esoteric stuff and actually wanting, the movie to be watchable.
Yeah, I agree. It it would take a little bit more setting up than I think we have time to do to give you a reason to see all those characters. And now maybe within Civil War, they give us we're supposed to see Spider-Man within Civil War. We're supposed to believe that Spider-Man has been acting as Spider-Man for a little while. So maybe along with that, you get, maybe Spider-Man mentions, hey, there are others that are out there. And, you lay the groundwork that way. But, if we see the unbeatable Squirrel Girl in a Marvel movie, or we see, I'm not expecting to see She-Hulk or, a big bad in Infinity War. But, it would be nice to see more Marvel heroes than I know what to do with, like those posters that they sell at Spencer Gifts, where it's just like 200 heroes deep.
Right.
That'd be nice.
I commented in the last episode about how I feel like, I think it was last episode, I feel like this movie is just going to be a huge action set piece, right?
Yeah.
So that does kind of lead, that goes hand in hand with trying to drop in 67 characters.
Yeah.
And the other thing we didn't talk about is 67 characters aren't all superheroes, right?
That's true.
For every Iron Man, there's a Pepper Potts, and so you can fill a lot of that number up with those types of characters.
Yeah,
so
you're exactly right.
I think that's some of the perspective we need when we hear that.
For sure.
Yeah. One of the other things that they've been talking about is that there's going to be a huge kind of paradigm shift after Infinity War, mainly, in my opinion, due to the reality of, trying to keep Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth and Robert Downey Jr. and all those guys under contract.
And
Scarlett Johansson Jr. Yeah.
Peak shape for the next 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough to ask Chris Hemsworth to drop down to 110 pounds to play a Moby Dick hunter, and then ask him to get jacked back up to 260 pure muscle for Thor. But yeah, they're talking about the possibility of a new team of Avengers, and not just Cap and Black Widow, and they have a couple of new people, but a fully new team that's led by someone different. And honestly, what I would like to see personally is, because we're going to have to start to see something of consequence happening in these movies, like deaths that mean something, deaths that carry on for a little while. Otherwise, what's the point? Why do you keep watching if there's no consequence? I'm anticipating, spoilers on a 10, 12-year-old comic book series, but the end of Civil War does end with the death of a major character.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of anticipating seeing something like that. That character is brought back, obviously, in the comics because comics.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see maybe the end of that movie ends in a very similar way to the comics, where Steve Rogers is killed, but then you see him brought back somehow cosmically to lead, the Avengers against a cosmic threat. Because then he would be gone for 2.5 years until we get the first Infinity War movie, and that would be a consequence. But what I would kind of like to see in the interim is an Avengers team that's made up of, I don't know, maybe Bucky or Falcon as Cap, with Black Panther and Ant-Man, and who there's rumors that we might see as Giant Man, which is awesome. I can't tell you how exciting it would be for me to see Paul Rudd the size of the Empire State Building.
Yes, I'm good with that.
That would be like the child inside me getting everything he ever wanted, was to see a movie with Giant Man on the screen. But are there any Avengers or Marvel characters that we haven't seen yet that you guys would kind of like to see on this team?
You brought up She-Hulk and said you didn't think we'd see her, but I think that would be a really fun character to introduce and have far enough away that they don't even really have to care who's cast as her or something like that. I don't know. That's a world screaming for females of consequence. Yeah. And we're supposed to be getting a Captain Marvel solo film, and then I doubt we ever see a Black Widow, but yeah, there's so many characters, and like you said, whether the audience even recognizes them or not, just having a plethora of a smorgasbord of superheroes that people go, yep, that's another superhero. Yep, that's another superhero would be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to see Captain Marvel leading this new team that they're teasing, to have a female leader of this team.
Yeah.
And I'd actually like to see She-Hulk as a Netflix series. One where she is allowed to work cases and be She-Hulk at the same time. All right, moving on from the MCU. We got some news that Twin Peaks will be dropping before next summer, which is very exciting. And we've gotten some more casting news, which means it is moving forward. They haven't started shooting yet, but Toph, you look like a little schoolboy, just waiting for this to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting for a long time now. So when it was, first announced originally, it was like, it's happening, it's the Showtime thing, and it's going to be here this summer. And that was like a year and a half ago. So anytime we just move a step closer to actually, being a real thing that I can put in my eyeballs, I get more and more excited because I really, truly love Twin Peaks.
On that bombshell, we're going to go ahead and take our first break. We'll be right back talking about the future and why they'll think that we're all stupid. We'll be back.
Welcome back to the PopNerdery podcast. We're now into our B segment, where we like to roll into a segment's small town or village, set up our own localized system of government, and slowly infiltrate this topic's way of life until they no longer remember us not being a part of their lives.
Yep.
So, along with that mantra, we're going to talk about things that I think there are one of the probably highlights of any history class is the sheer idiocy of those who have come before us. And a lot of that comes in like sad or bad ways, like, world wars. And some of it is like, it totally makes sense for you to tie a dead bird around your neck so you don't get the flu. You nailed it there. Ancient medicine, you knocked it out of the park. And it's all well and good, and it's funny, and it's hilarious to think, oh my god, these people were idiots. How didn't they all die in mass numbers?
Leeches!
Right on the balls. It's going to be good for you. You're going to love it. The problem with that is future generations are going to look back at us and say the exact same thing. So in an attempt to be an enlightened generation, a generation of bon vivants and thinkers, of Renaissance men, we're going to attempt to identify our own idiocy.
Yeah, right? Spoiler alert, we are also the worst.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. And I just want to set the stage for the listener. We're not talking about fads or trends that, seem silly in the near future. We're talking about things that just are normal day occurrences that future generations will see as complete lunacy.
And requires, I'm going to go ahead and set a timeline of 50 years to look stupid.
Yes.
Because every decade looks dumb to the next decade, but it really takes 50 years before something truly has enough history and lens on it to be able to say, boy, that was dangerously dumb, that thing you were doing. So speaking of things that are dangerously dumb, it's come to my attention recently, and I don't know if everyone knows this, but a lot of you people are driving around vehicles that explode dinosaurs near your crotches as a form of propulsion, and that seems like a terrible thing to do. Like, I don't know.
What?
I know. Like, it scares me too. There's literally mere inches of metal between all of your precious genitals, all of you who are driving cars, the two of you, sure, but like everyone who's hearing this, your precious genitals in exploding dinosaurs. And that's the thing that's scooting you down the road.
And you sound like a scientist.
I played one on television, but I also play a real-life electric car driver. So I think that history will be on my side in 50 years where we look back and go, no, really, we blew up dinosaurs near our genitals as a form of propulsion. What?
I wrote down cars as well, but I was coming at it from a different angle, and my angle was that people will think it's silly that we all owned our own cars.
I think that that's also very much the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
However, living in suburbia as I do,
Yes.
When you say mass transit, the people around here break out into hives. So, for the time being, I need to move or find a way that moves me down the street that doesn't involve my genitals and dinosaurs.
Yeah,
but that's also okay to address, right? Because everybody around you is breaking out into hives because it's such an adopted situation, right? So that's exactly what we're trying to get into. Go ahead, Dave.
And I was going to say, I might not think mass transit. I might think, things like ride sharing or Zipcar or Ford actually was just talking about a thing this week about, having a group of people lease a car. And that seems dangerous for my budget. But it seems good for not only the environment, but the idea of, I have to buy a $20,000 piece of machinery in order to just get to where I need to go every day.
Sure. And I think that very well could be a real thing. I'm willing to look at my car as an introvert tax because all of those things made me break out into hives. Like the idea of being trapped in a car with basic randoms or directly adjacent to me. I would walk, quit my job, or pay my $20,000 introvert tax to not have to do that.
I'll go a step further and say, most people view their car primarily as a means to get to work, and that's probably an aspect of this that we ought to talk about. I'd be surprised in the distant future how many people are actually commuting to a work location.
Physical location.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly understand there will still. I don't see people being shut-ins in the near future and having no human contact, unless you want to get into a scenario where you're talking about taking your avatar out for a walk. That type of a future, I suppose. But yeah, I think that plays into the primary need for most of us to own a car. And so if you didn't have that component there, then you'd be renting cars when you wanted to actually do travel or go to a place, or you're booking an Uber or a driverless car type of service to get you from A to B.
Yeah.
So, and I think along that line is kind of the, that's obviously going to be a very slow process. As we kind of, all of these cultural shifts are tremendously slow processes. That's partially why they don't necessarily feel seismic to the people who kind of receive it. But for those of us who are at the other end of it, would feel tremendously seismic. So, Brent, what else kind of stands out to you? What do you think what is the most obvious one to you?
Most obvious is probably physical money. That is something that over time has, certainly at one point, bartering was the only means of exchanging, goods and services. So I will make you 2 pairs of shoes, and you have to give me half of your, corn crop for next week or whatever. That necessitated the physical money exchange at a certain point, and now we're to the point where physical money is kind of a rarity, I think, for our generation to actually walk around with anyway. I've gone on rants before about pennies and how they cost twice as much as they're actually worth, and how that's an absolute ludicrous way for our government to continue to waste our tax dollars. But it's things like that where, the technology absolutely already exists, and it's just a cultural shift and, trust factor, I think, more than anything, from some of the older generations, and then, younger generations feeling like they have a handle on finances in a way that's, intelligent and ethical for physical money to maybe go away, if that makes sense.
I feel like we're already on the cusp of this shift, as you kind of touched on. I would like to do a very informal poll here. How much physical money do you have, and I want to caveat this, like, if you have a secret, like, $100,000 stash of cash in your house, you're under no legal obligation to announce that here.
I'm like Ron Swanson, I bury gold in the backyard.
Right, so, I want to caveat that with, I think I had, like, honestly, probably the largest source of liquid cash in the entirety of my household is my son's piggy bank. And he's 2.5, so it's probably like, I would say under $15.
As a rule, I carry $40 in my wallet, and that is the only cash money. And it's honestly it is inconvenient to spend. It's two $20 bills, and I almost never break it.
Yeah,
it just sits in there just in case I'm stuck in a quagmire of some kind.
That's a smart plan. However, I immediately was like, that sounds like a huge pain in my ass to carry around 2 pieces of paper.
Yeah, and I've kind of gone through waves where I'm like, well, I want at least some cash on me at all times. I still think back to, my grandfathers or my parents, parents of my friends, where it was just like they busted out like a couple $100 bills every once in a while to pay for something or to hand to somebody at a wedding or whatever, and the nostalgic part of me goes, that's kind of cool. I handed out money clips to my groomsmen at my wedding, in fact. But yeah, I don't keep cash on me very well. So, Dave, when I try to have $20 or $40 in my wallet, I find justifications for breaking that money way too easily on food that's not very good for me. Or
it's like money found.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm nearly to the point where I was thinking about this, and I went to the logical extension of, like, I have no cash. I don't actually remember the last time I went to the ATM. In fact, now that I think about it, I'm not actually sure I remember what my ATM PIN is, which probably isn't a great thing now that I think about it.
Once you figure it out, just tell me.
Yeah,
I'll remember.
I'll put it in the comment section so we can all make sure we have access to it. I don't ever see
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
If it was that, I would remember. That would be easy, but I was too clever for myself. I don't ever see a physical paycheck. I kept checks in college, and then I lost my checkbook. And then just, as opposed to getting new checks or canceling them, I just emptied the account and got a new bank and proceeded to pay my rent in cash, where I'd actually have to go to the bank, get whatever specific denomination it was, and then carry that to my leasing complex because I didn't want to deal with checks. Yeah. I think that was the last time I touched, my money exists in a completely fictional state.
Was it like,
almost at all times.
Was it like in the movie Big, where you said, can I please have $432 in singles, and then you rolled around in it for a while before you turned it into the leasing company?
I'm not going to lie. There are a lot of times that I asked for it in very odd denominations just because I didn't like my leasing company very much.
Yeah,
and I didn't particularly care if it was, in an easy-to-handle denomination. So there was a time that a lot of it was paid in rolls of quarters.
There you go.
Also really fun to sit around and think about how fictional just where Tom Hanks' character in Big actually lived, and how
hilarity
all the things that he bought. But that's a totally side
totally different conversation. We could talk for an entire half hour about the places where people live in media are way more expensive than they could afford.
And we will.
And we will.
That's a problem.
So yeah, physical money. I think people will laugh at that in the future,
especially paper money.
I'm already on the cusp, or coins specifically. Paper money, fine, but the idea of small metallic discs that have some sort of fictional ratio of gold behind it that signify a value that I have to carry on my physical person, that already sounds stupid.
Yeah. And another part of this is I think everything. There's the whole Kmart pricing model of, $12.95 so that it looks like $12, but it's actually $13. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, pricing matches kind of the idea that physical money's gone away too, where it's like everything costs an even number at least. I very soon want pennies to go away, and then everything should be an even amount of coins. But yeah, I could see everything being rounded up to the nearest 25 very quickly after that, or 50 or whatever. So
yeah. So I think along kind of a similar line there is something that we've seen, and this is a little more esoteric, but I feel like it's been it's one of the more noticeable shifts is in the way that we advertise the products that we're spending this pretend money on.
Yeah.
In terms of how, it very much used to be a simple advertisement that this thing was available, and then it became ours is better than the other one that's available because of this.
Yes.
And then it became a interested third party tells you about this, and why they use it, which then became an expert tells you why they like this. More doctors smoke Camels because it hits their T-zone. It's like, yes, doctors are telling you to smoke cigarettes.
Or get this before it's all gone.
Oh, that came next. Then it was a implied scarcity, where this is a limited edition. This is a thing that you can only get if you go purchase it right now, and it was a fictional scarcity. And now we're kind of in the era of we're going to scare you into buying things. You're going to be uncool if you don't do this. You will fail at sports if you don't drink Gatorade. Women will kick you in the street if you're not wearing Nikes.
Sign up for a security system or your wife will get punched by a robber.
She will get set on fire and thrown in a dumpster in a scary part of town that you're afraid of.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that has that will always hold a place. It just might take different forms. But I think especially when it comes to consumer goods, even the nightly news uses a lot of scare tactics to get their points across. And I think within probably our lifetime, we will have a much stronger understanding of statistics and sampling, and understand that thing that happened. I really hope.
Let's hope.
You've seen that meme going around on Facebook about that if we divided Powerball, everybody gets $4 million, which is
People don't know how to use a calculator.
Like, never mind statistics. That's dividing. Shit.
Yeah, what I mean is maybe not a very clear understanding of the specifics of all of that math, but I think that they will just understand conceptually that, because this thing happened, down the street, that does not mean that it's also necessarily going to happen elsewhere or whatever. But maybe I'm thinking way too lofty.
Yeah, that's hard, and I'm going to talk about cynical versus optimistic a little bit later, because I think that's where I go when I think about this. Is are we going to be cynical about what the future is going to be versus optimistic? But as far as marketing, I think the thing that will change, and this is a little cynical, but the thing that will change is not that they'll stop using scare tactics, or not that there'll certainly be an evolution, but I think the biggest change will be that they give us a choice to look at advertising versus not. I think that right now we have the choice to look at advertising because, if you look at a website, it's on a banner ad, or you can use an ad blocker, or if you watch TV, you can use a DVR and skip past it, or you watch a YouTube ad, you can skip past it. I think companies giving us a choice of whether or not we want to watch it is what will change.
And I feel like we're definitely already kind of on the cusp of this in terms of, forced advertising is becoming easier and easier to limit. You can't ever really be able to stop a bus from driving past you with a signage on the back. But, Dave mentioned all the ways that we can basically digitally erase a lot of the advertising we're exposed to, which means that we actually select what advertising we want to see now. And so companies are having to stop from doing the kind of scare tactics, you're bad, dumb, weak, whatever, if you're not using our product, and instead are having to become more positive in terms of their messaging and actually talking about product features and talking about, reasons their company is different or whatever else, because it's becoming opt-in marketing.
And build value before the sell.
Precisely.
Well, and I think consumers, by and large, are doing that to themselves by being more educated about every purchase that they make. It's pretty rare that I go to a very specialized store and browse something for the very first time with the intention of buying, right? I shop online where I can do things harmlessly, become more educated, know what questions I want to ask, and then go to the expert. And I can also price compare very easily online, and so all of that stuff, has to be something marketing overcomes or supplements rather than.
I think supplements is the key. You can't overcome it. It's got to be a supplemental piece.
Yeah, and I think I used to work for a very large big box retailer that will remain nameless, which I loved working for, so that'll kind of tell you which one it was.
It's the same one that I worked for, Dave.
Exactly. So we were terrified that we were just going to become a showroom for Amazon. Mm-hmm. And that's a very real fear. So I think one thing that we might find silly, 50 years from now when we look back, is that retailers tried to price each other out. Mm-hmm. In the future, they may just say, here's the aggregate price online, or here's the best price online. We're going to advertise that to you because that's what will get you to buy in the moment. I already know that I can price match Amazon when I go to the Big Red Bullseye, but a lot of people don't, and it will either cause them to, spend more money as they, the retailer would like you to do, or get them to go buy online at Amazon. So there might be in the future a way that consumers are a little bit more intelligent about what's the best price they could be paying.
Well, then we're going to get to the differentiation. This doesn't have to do with advertising, but that just jumps into the differentiation between immediacy need and want need, the luxury need, where, a television I'm buying from Amazon, but if I've got to get a shower curtain, I'm not, even with Amazon Prime 2-day shipping, I'm not waiting. I need to go to Target and buy a shower curtain.
Yeah, and there are, and I think I mentioned on the show before, there are sometimes I choose to pay more money to support the things that I like. If you go to a local bookstore,
wholeheartedly.
There's sometimes that happens. So what I was talking about earlier in terms of cynical versus optimistic, people might look back 50 years from now and think the thing that we had in this time was dumb, because the world is a much better place than it is right now, or because the world is a much worse place than it is now. I'm, in general, a glass half full kind of guy, so I'd like to think that they look back on us and think that we were dumb because our world was worse than theirs. But there's also the possibility that they look back on us and they say, wow, they really hadn't figured out the way to squeeze the most money from those consumers yet, or something like that. So if I'm optimistic, I'd like to think that 50 years from now people will look back on us and say, wow, there were 4.5 guns per individual in the United States in 2016? That is insane. Or, wow, you could buy a bazooka in the United States? That is insane. I'd like for people to look back on our society and say that we had expanded the Second Amendment a little bit further than we probably should, and that's as far as I'll go politically. Also, I think that the internet will be a thing that people will look back on 50 years from now, and they'll either say, in an optimistic view of the world, they'll either say, wow, back then they hadn't turned the internet into a public utility yet. You paid, cents per hour for, like we do with electricity now. But cynically, you might say, wow, the internet was free and open in 2016? That's insane. You could record and publish a podcast, and there was nobody there to tell you couldn't do it. I mean, we might need somebody to tell us at some point that this is dumb, but I'm glad
that right out of my cold, dead hands.
Right, and I'm glad that the internet is free and open right now. So I think, for me, it's a lot about, are we going to be optimistic about the future and looking at what 50 years is going to look like, or are we all sad and thinking that
5 minutes talking about how the children are sending dick pics to the White House? The future is fucked.
No,
this is the high watermark of civilization.
Yeah.
No. This is the clear differentiation between Topher and Brent.
Correct.
Right? We absolutely, as we get older, will view all of the things that change as worse, as bad.
I don't know.
Or as bad for bad sake. Even the Daves and Brents of the worlds that are overly optimistic will be on board for a while. But we also, going back to the last point, marketing, we are the target demographic for everything.
Right now.
The three of us on this podcast right now are the target demographic for almost every product, every
service,
medium of art, everything, right?
18 to 35.
And we will eventually age out of that, which was kind of a realization that I had just over the last few years, and it makes.
I can't wait. I can't wait to get out of the fucking zeitgeist.
But here's my point, actually, is that they've done studies, and over time, the human species average IQ raises.
Correct.
Right? So there is no way I can possibly be cynical about, the future of our society, of our youth, of any of that, when there is nothing I can see slowing down that trend, unless we get to the 13th hour and we haven't fixed, whatever it is, be it global warming or whatever, that kills us all. But I tend to find humans to be pretty resourceful over history. At some point, I do see the future humans going, what? All humans didn't even speak the same language? How did they function? Yeah. Things like that, I definitely... we could go to those places in this conversation. Sitting is the new cancer is a term that we've all heard, and I certainly think there's a lot of understanding that needs to happen about what we're doing to our bodies, given the fact that we're all ridiculously obese and lethargic compared to our ancestors who evolved this body for us that we aren't using correctly.
We evolved to chase prey, and now we sit in front of computer screens and watch Peaky Blinders.
I still chase prey. I just do it with my thumbs. Like controller. I would argue that my thumbs are way more developed than any other. I would put my thumbs up against any previous generation of human beings.
I think the most outdated thing outside of pennies, we've talked about pennies, the most outdated thing that we still currently do is daylight savings time.
Oh, God.
It's been scientifically proven that daylight savings time causes seasonal depression.
Yes.
Because it gets darker earlier, and it's dark when you leave work, and it's dark all the time, and your day is short, and it makes you sad. Doing that is going to become it's fully man-made. It is totally within our control. We can stop this at any point.
Yep.
We are no longer an agrarian society.
And that's not even the reason...
Thank you.
Hey, let's all jump all over that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've backfilled this idea into some quaint notion of like it was an agrarian society which needed the daylight, and no, they didn't. In the middle of winter, they're not doing shit. Like, no, there's no reason to shift that. When farmers farm, when the sun comes up, when they stop, when it goes down. They don't give a shit what their clock says. They just get up and do it.
So.
I think
roosters don't observe daylight savings time.
They don't have watches. Sorry.
Let's get rid of that shit now, because
this is the other thing we're going to see, where I think we're going to become. I could see a scenario in which our time zones even become more hyper-local as that trend exists. Because even if you look at Eastern, like my 5 o'clock is the same as Boston's, and though geographically are two very different things. Whereas Chicago and Indianapolis's are vastly different. And that makes little to no sense whatsoever. So, and this is always going to be exemplified living on the edge of a time zone like it is with, Indiana and Illinois. But, there's going to become a shift there because it ceases to make sense that, people in Boston are working until it's been dark for like an hour and a half. And then that's their 5 o'clock and going home. And we're going to start to shift where the time aligns to the actual positioning of the sun like it makes sense to do.
Yeah, it is very sad when you leave work at 5 o'clock and it is pitch dark outside.
It is the absolute worst.
Yeah, and that's not just a thing that I say. That is a scientific fact. It makes you sad. Seasonal affective disorder.
It's why Daddy drinks.
And there have been studies about how daylight savings time affects the productivity of the American workforce and. More accidents occur and all this. There are very negative side effects that are happening over something that is totally, an antiquated methodology that there's not much justification for. So
humans have very simple lizard brains. If you suddenly sleep deprive a large portion of that lizard brain population, it's not surprising that horrible things come out of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What else?
So I just to plug another podcast a little bit. Toph, are you ready for this?
The podcast.
He's never ready.
I will plug the Freakonomics podcast.
Oh, God, they need another beer if you plug fucking crack again.
They do an excellent job of just asking kind of outlandish questions sometimes that are really good about helping me think and just going through kind of thought exercises about stuff. And there was an episode an episode a few weeks back. I forgot what podcasts were called. They are called episodes. I had to look into that since I host a podcast. And in September, they did an episode about belts. I thought it was kind of a compelling topic. If we really think about what belts are, they're basically zip ties for our bodies to hold up a thing that gravity doesn't want to stay up. And why do we even wear pants to begin with? Tunics are a lot more
on the
practical.
belt continues.
Yeah, exactly.
But pants keep your legs warm. I live in a frigid climate. A skirt is going to do bad things for me.
Doesn't mean you can't wear anything under the skirt.
But what would go under my skirt if it's not pants?
It would be elastic still.
Exactly.
Oh, so I'm going to wear tights under my skirt?
Yeah, you wear sweatpants.
I do think that.
But wait, sweatpants have a... Dave, I'm going to cut you off here, because sweatpants have built-in belts.
That's fair.
What the tie is. So is that not the same principle?
They're just much more comfortable belts.
I'll use my suspenders, and then I'll put my tunic over the suspenders.
I mean, in our media, they show us that in the future we'll all be wearing jumpsuits. Do you think?
I am team jumpsuit. I want to be very clear. My siblings and I this Christmas, my mother bemoaned our lack of Christmas spirit in terms of doing things that were fun or cute or interesting. I thought that just showing up sober on Christmas was pretty spirited, but apparently that wasn't enough.
Thumbs up.
Right? So we bought outlandish onesies, adult onesies.
Nice.
And so I'm now the proud owner of a footless, hooded onesie with a giant American flag running up and down the entirety of the body. And we bought it as like a funny thing to have on Christmas because that's funny.
But you're totally going to wear that to U.S. soccer games, aren't you?
I just wear it around the house.
Oh, okay.
I wear that. I mean, I will, yes. Because then it would be appropriate for me to wear it outside, and I can be like, guys, look, I'm ironic and funny. When in reality, I'm like, this is fucking comfortable as hell, and I'm the happiest person in this bar right now.
I mean, and guys, Topher is a large human being. I don't know where you found a zip-up pajama.
Amazon, and it was XXX. So it's a little loose in the sides, but it's roomy in the groin, which is really the only important thing.
As a benefit.
But guys,
that's
jumpsuits
also
are amazing.
That again, pants. What? I mean, there's not nearly enough just room in groins. Let's be honest.
This is why I bought my jumpsuit with extra groin space. I'm living in the future right now, guys. I'm calling from 50 years from now and telling you, I'd like to liberate you.
So yeah, I may have brought up belts on the podcast before, but Freakonomics does an excellent job. If this topic really enthused you, I think Freakonomics is an excellent place to do some thought exercises while you're exercising or not sitting, since that's the new cancer.
You know what's a great thing to do while you are sitting, though? In the comment section of this episode, tell us what things you think are absolutely ludicrous. I think we touched on some good ones. To be fair, I think I kind of hit the high watermark early that the fact you people are blowing dinosaurs up at your genitals. But, if there are other things that concern future you, hit us up in the comments. I know we left some stuff out, and I think that there's a conversation to be had. So, at PopNerdery on Twitter, in the comment section, let us know what things you're most disgusted with us as a species for doing. And with that, we will be back for a final wrap-up and some recommendations in the next segment. Stay with us.
Welcome back. In our last segment, we will just quickly give you a couple little recommendations that we think each other need to be up on, or you guys need to check out in the meantime while you are waiting on episode 10. And I think, Toph, you had something specific that you were ready to talk about, right?
I do, in a recommendation that's both awesome and maybe for the first time terrible. David Bowie died on Monday of this week as we're recording this, and the world is a worse place without David Bowie. For a couple of guys who make a podcast about culture, I'm not sure that you could point to someone who maybe has as much impact on culture that one single person did than David Bowie. You know, he's an incredible musician, actor, style icon. You know, everything from writing to fashion to just, you know, honestly embodying culture, and not only doing it for a short amount of time in a way that is very, you know, flash in the pan, this fad was interesting kind of a way, but constantly reinventing himself for the better part of 50 years. And not only doing it, but doing it effectively and setting trends. Been said ad nauseum on the internet, but the only thing that David Bowie did that wasn't cool was dying. And short of that, the rest of his life was just literally the persona of cool and culture.
And honestly, I think he did dying pretty cool, and this is going to segue right into your recommendation.
Yeah.
He died on Monday and dropped his last album on Friday.
On his 69th birthday. So yeah, if you're going to go, like, you know, Bowie set the bar pretty high in terms of, you know, he had been battling cancer unbeknownst to the world, which is kind of, in today's stardom and gossip rags and everything else, its own tiny miracle that, you know, one of the world's most popular people had been, you know, pretty drastically sick for a very long time, and no one knew about it. Dropped an album, 7 songs, called Black Star, that basically, when it was released, was, you know, a lot of people liked it, and it was good. I gave it a listen. I enjoyed it. I am a devotee of his work in pretty much all arenas. But then it basically became clear once he passed on Monday that this was basically his way of saying, I'm dying, so here's an album on my way out. He scored his own exit. And a lot of the stuff on Black Star, I mean, it's worth it. It stands on its own. It's really good. It's great. But then when you go back and listen to songs specifically like Lazarus in the accompanying video that he shot while he was deathly ill with cancer and still managed to look like a goddamn just absolute sex machine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing else to it. It just, the world is a little darker for not having David Bowie. So, you know, go out and listen to everything. Listen to Ziggy Stardust, Diamond Dogs, the Berlin Trio. You know, listen to all of the things that made us love him. But I definitely recommend listening to Black Star because it's basically his way of saying, guys, I gotta go. And it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And it's funny, you talked right there about all the ways you can listen to David Bowie, and I'll say, just from my vantage, the way I kind of became introduced to David Bowie was Labyrinth was one of my iconic films growing up, and just the way that villain Jareth was terrifying but charming and cool, but
enticing as hell.
Also androgynous. Yeah. It was so interesting and stuff that, you know, only Bowie could really pull off. And there was a really cool image that I caught online. It basically said David Bowie, a rock legend who only ever took classes in saxophone, and a screen legend who only ever took classes in mime. And I think that's just a cool way to really, you know, sum up a big philosophy that we all should take more to heart. You know, never give up on your daydream, whatever that is. So, David Bowie, rest in peace.
Absolutely. All right, and I'm going to move on to something a little more nebulous, and I'm going to hopefully give you guys a little chuckle, because my recommendation this week is bookcases. Get a good bookcase. Get a good bookcase.
Now tell me more about this. I'm fascinated by your concept.
Rearrange your books.
Uh-huh.
Take the time to pull all the books off the bookshelf, not just transfer them from one shelf to another. Put them in order, put them in genres, put them in categories, put them together and rediscover the stuff that you've already read, rediscover the stuff that you've already enjoyed, and give yourself the time to spend some time with that stuff. I got a bookcase, obviously, this weekend. I built it. By built it, I mean I built it as in the instructions told me to, and I put it together like a white collar man does. Target told me how to put it together, and I did. But what I was able to do was I was able to take a bunch of books out of boxes and a bunch of books out of, you know, off my nightstand and a bunch of different places for my office, and think about them in, what category do they belong in, and how prominently do I want to place them and stuff like that. And it forced me to rediscover some stuff that I think I took for granted. So my secondary recommendation, after bookcases, which go buy one and do this, it's fun, or build one if you're, mechanically inclined.
Yeah, do that thing if you can do it, because that's way better.
Yeah, I lack those skills, so
Me
I
too.
bought one and then built it. But
I laughed at Dave when he brought this up, but in reality, this is something I do probably every 3 months.
just take everything down and rediscover.
I rearrange my office, and that leads to moving the bookcase, which means I take everything off of it, and then I do this at I start this project at Saturday, 10 a.m., and I'm like, I'll get this done by lunch. And about 2 a.m. Sunday morning, as I'm sitting on my office floor reading comics or flipping through books and listening to albums I haven't listened to in the better part of 3 months, I'm like, oh shit, and then I put everything back in there quickly and move on. But yes, this is a cathartic thing to do. If you are a collector of media, physical media, it doesn't work super well with DVDs because that's a little more of a time investment. But for records, books, comics, anything like that, that lets you just have a flip through as you pick stuff up and put it back in there.
Yeah,
that's a good feeling.
And this goes pretty well with our B segment, because in 50 years people might think physical media is a crazy thing.
Oh, 100%.
You know what? We live right now, and I am a lover, especially of physical books, and especially of physical books that have fantastic artwork inside them that are difficult to replicate on an iPad screen.
Word.
So my secondary recommendation, something that I rediscovered while cleaning my bookshelf, was my love of books written by Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis writes nonfiction books, but he writes them with kind of a narrative prose style, and I very much appreciate them. The last time I read the book Moneyball, which I'm a huge baseball fan, Toast a huge baseball fan, was my freshman year of college, was the last time I read that book, and because I reorged my bookshelf, I'm now rereading and finishing that book. The Big Short just came out this fall. I'll probably go ahead and reread The Big Short before I go and see that movie. It has been a little bit of a renaissance for stuff that I've already read. I know that there's a lot on my list that I need to get to still, but revisiting stuff that you already like also has value.
Hello, watching The Wire for the 3rd time.
Exactly. Or The West Wing for the 5th time.
So I think that covers your recommendation, Dave. Good stuff by you. One thing that we've talked about right here on this podcast before is, for me as a father, I have to think through what's the right time to show my kids an iconic film, or what's the right age to get them into a certain IP or whatever. And one of the ways that my wife and I have tried to tackle this is actually we found a website called commonsensemedia.org. And part of me wants to, battle this, where they say the best age for me to show this film is, 6, but I'm ready to show my kid now, and he's not 6.
You want to have a discussion with the website?
Right. But I think it's a great gauge for certain things, and it might help me remove my own nostalgic appreciation for something and look at something a little bit more critically. So whether it's a TV series or a movie that I'm into, or I think my kids would be into, I think it's just a good touch point. And so for all of the parents out there, I think this is something you ought to check out, just because it helps you wrap your mind around certain things that you loved at a certain age or think your kids might be into that's newer. So commonsensemedia.org, and by visiting this website, I actually looked to see what some of the best movies for kids on Netflix were, and I came across a film that might be on some of your radars. It's called The Gruffalo. Either of you familiar with this one?
No.
I've heard the name, but I don't know what it is.
But I'm listening.
It's an animated short film. So, here's a podcast where I'd say fuck and also shit. But I am ready to plug a children's short film.
But check out this kid's animated movie.
because it was fucking cool. It was really good. It actually has Robbie Coltrane and Helena Bonham Carter and
you said my magic word.
James Corden. So there's people voices you're going to recognize whether you want to recognize them or not. It's based on a book written by Julia Donaldson, published in 1999, but the film came out I think in 2009 and was nominated for an Academy Award. So it kind of makes me want to revisit animated short films in general, and especially with streaming opportunities, there's probably a great option to pick up on some of those things that maybe we missed somewhere along the way. But The Gruffalo is a kid's story that has a pretty cool message, and it works for adults, even though it's a quote-unquote kids film. So that's my recommendation.
When you said The Gruffalo, I thought you were talking about The Babadook, which was a horror movie, and very much not. Like, it features a kid, and the antagonist comes out of a children's book. And I was like, this is a very strange children's recommendation that Brett is making right now. Until I realized that it was The Babadook and not the Janine Garofalo.
No. And so my recommendation, while it sounds pretty darn wholesome and a little campy, I'm sure, I do think that a 25-year-old adult male, if he's surfing around Netflix looking for something short and quick to watch, would still find some humor and appreciation out of it. So there we go. That's what I got for this week. Any other thoughts, gentlemen?
I just have two. As the official stance of the PopNerdery podcast, one, fuck cancer. Fuck it in its stupid face.
Yeah.
And two,
I really think I can get behind that. That's a... Yeah.
I felt good speaking for all of us there.
Absolutely.
And the thing that I found comfort in losing Bowie is that on Earth 2, he's probably still alive.
Absolutely. That's what the Flash would tell us.
That's all I have to hang on to right now. So I'm hoping that the metaverse collapses sooner rather than later so I can get David Bowie back.
Well, especially on that note, that kind of wraps up the show, brings us to the ends of our thoughts for episode 9. Thank you so much for listening. As a reminder, please join the conversation with us in the comments section of the podcast posts on popnerdery.com. Rate, review us on iTunes to help out the show. I've already been hearing a little bit more buzz, especially after the big Star Wars episode. We plan on doing more of those in the future, outside of just kind of our traditional episode format. So stay tuned for a lot more of that stuff.
Yeah, I misspoke last time at the end of the Star Wars show and said that the next time we would do this would be for Captain America. Obviously, we're going to do this for Batman v Superman as well. So that'll happen in March.
I could see a scenario where we do it for Deadpool, frankly.
Absolutely.
So I think a lot of those will be coming. I think people have been enjoying it. But again, let us know in the comments, rates, and reviews why you did or didn't like it.
I don't want to hear why you didn't like it. Tell me why you liked it.
Don't direct your comments toward Toph. But,
I'm fragile.
I appreciate constructive criticism. As always, Dave, why don't you tell the listeners where we can find your stuff, buddy?
I tweet for the show at PopNerdery.
And Toph, where can our listeners find your flaming hot takes?
You can find me discussing the minutia of every sports league across the world at the Hospital Ball.
And I am there at Shouldn't Brag But. And with that, friends, patriots,
true believers,
swelting friends, I'm melting. Friends, are you calling on Aquaman? Beyond
end the show.
We will be ending the show with finger guns.
Finger guns.
Love you guys.
In the year 3000. Or it's the year 2000.
It is in the year 2000.
Year 2000.
Well done.